In this video I'll show you how to create a realistic 3D highlighter effect in Filmora 14. Check it out. First, I have an image of a newspaper that I'll drag and drop onto the timeline. Next, I double-click on the image and open the transform tool in the video panel. Here, I'll adjust the scale and position of the image to fit just right. Now, let's go to the stock media section and click on solid colors. From there, I'll drag and drop a yellow color image onto the timeline. Double-click on it, unlock the scale and adjust it to create a stripe for highlighting text. Make sure the size and position of this stripe are aligned with the text below it. Once that's set, I'll disable the newspaper layer temporarily and take a snapshot of the yellow stripe in PNG format. Then I'll enable the newspaper layer again and add 2 transform keyframes to it. In the last keyframe, I'll adjust the position downwards, which creates a top-down animation effect. I also want to highlight some text below in the newspaper, so I'll create another yellow stripe using the same method and take another snapshot in PNG format. Wherever I want to highlight text, I'll place the yellow stripe above it and take a snapshot again. Take another snapshot in PNG format. After I've created all my PNG stripes, I'll delete the original yellow image from the timeline. Now I'll drag and drop the first PNG stripe image onto the timeline for the first text. Double-click on the stripe image, go to the mask section, and choose a linear mask. I'll invert this mask and move its position to the left side of the stripe to hide it. Here, I'll add the first keyframe for the mask position. Next, I'll move the playhead a bit further and add another keyframe to the mask position. In this keyframe, I'll move the mask to the right to reveal the stripe, creating a nice reveal animation. I can also add a little blur to the mask, setting the blur strength to around 2%. Now let's go to the image panel and scroll down to change the blending mode in the compositing tool. I'll select darken or multiply. In my case, I'm going with darken. After the stripe animation finishes, the newspaper animation starts, so I'll need to adjust the position of the stripe to track with the text. I'll add 2 transform keyframes to the stripe image, matching the 2 keyframes for the newspaper. In the second keyframe, I'll move the stripe up with the text. I'll repeat this process for all the highlight animations. Once I've created all these animations, I'll select everything on the timeline, right-click and choose Create Compound Clip. Next, let's head to the Effects tab. Click on the Basics section and search for the 3D Motion Right effect. I'll drag and drop it onto the timeline. This effect will give our highlighter a 3D look. Double-click on the effect to adjust the settings. I'll reduce the blur to around 22%. And set the length as needed. After that, I'll add a 3D motion left effect. I'll go back to the Effects tab and drag this effect to the end of the second text highlight. Again, I'll double-click and reduce the blur to about 22%. Between the two effects, I'll add 2 transform keyframes to the newspaper image and adjust the scale and position to create a smoother animation. At the end of the last effect, I'll add 2 blur keyframes, setting the second keyframe to 0% blur because I want to keep the edges sharp. Finally, I'll trim and delete any extra parts on the timeline. It's looking good, but we can add one more touch. Let's head back to the Effects tab and search for the Vignette Radiuses effect. I'll drag it onto the timeline and increase its duration. Double-click to adjust its settings. I'll mainly tweak the opacity, reducing it to about 50%. After all that, you'll be able to see the final preview of this realistic 3D highlighter effect.